for attending this evening. We certainly value your time. We want to get started on time. We also want to acknowledge, we know it's a busy time of the season. You've got other things you might want to be doing this evening, so we wanted to just have a discussion with you as we embark on this $1.7 million project early next year. This is a lot of money that the village is investing, and certainly it's an incredibly significant investment into your neighborhood streets. I'm Scott Larmer, I'm the village manager, and I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce council members that are present tonight. So on my far left is Mayor Tom Muthing, and right here in the back is one of our newest council members, Bob Rosen. Bob is going to be the chair of the Streets Committee, and he just started last week. Also wanted to introduce staff that are present. So to my left here behind the camera is Tammy Reesner. Tammy is the clerk of council and also the assistant to the manager. In the far back is Wes Brown. Wes is the zoning and project administrator. And to his left is Sergeant Tim Schmidt-Gosselin with our police and fire department. And then to my left is Frank Twehues. Frank is with CT Consultants. He is also our village engineer. So even though it's a contractual relationship, he is our village engineer and does work for us. So this project has been a long time coming. We began seeking grants in 2015 for this particular project. And we were seeking grants because of the complexity of the project and the cost of it. So it's a $1.7 million project, and obviously the village did not have the means for that particular project. We were diligent in our grant application. So we started in 15, and every year after that, we applied for grants. We continued to tweak a few things, make a few modifications to try to position us to get money. This past year was the first year we were successful in getting any money at all. We ended up getting $215,000. For a $1.7 million project, that's not a lot of money towards the project, but we'll take it. It's money that we'll take. So about 12% of the project, so we're going to move forward. I think the impetus was the grant, but then Village Council took action this past year in working on an accelerated streets program. They recognized that the village needed to put more money into the streets, the infrastructure. So they came up with a plan over the next 7 to 8 years to invest over $7 million into our streets here in the village. So between the grant and the actions of Village Council, we're moving forward with this project. So what we're here tonight for is to ask the village engineer to make a presentation about this particular project and how it's going to affect you, although we're not certain exactly how it's going to affect you because we've not put it out for bid, so we still haven't identified the contractor yet. But we wanted to do a couple of things tonight. One is to talk about the design of the project, some of the elements of it, and so Frank Twehues will go over that. We also want to make sure we've got a good dynamic list of people that live on the street so that we can get contact information, because that's going to be important as we move forward in regards to construction. So as you came in, there were a couple sheets back there. Make sure that your names and contact information are on those sheets so that we're able to reach out to you. The other part of that is, obviously, we're missing some people this evening. So please feel free to take some of those sheets of paper, pass them on to your neighbors, encourage your neighbors to interface with us so that we get a complete list of everybody that's going to be affected. The other thing that we're looking for is you maybe have a stormwater problem that we don't know about. Maybe you're on a dialysis machine and we don't know about that. There's some of those types of things we need to know. So tonight we're going to have questions after the presentation, just general questions. But then if you have specific questions for like a stormwater project or something in your household, maybe somebody lives with you that needs some special attention, those are the things that you can come up and talk to Frank about afterwards. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Frank. I would just encourage you, all of your information, all of your questions should be directed to Frank. He is the expert here. He's the one who's going to be addressing the issues. But we also have the other staff members that can participate and answer any of your questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Frank Twehues. Frank?
Thank you, Scott. So I'm just going to jump right in. So I'm assuming all of you are in the neighborhood. In the event that you're not in the neighborhood, our project is all of North Farmcrest, all of South Farmcrest, and Kincaid Road. So Kincaid from North Farmcrest to about 400 foot south of South Farmcrest. These are located south of Section Road, east of Ridge Road, so in that kind of southeast quadrant of the village, if you aren't living in that neighborhood. Here's an aerial. It kind of zooms in a little bit. So I have two colors. I have red and blue, and I'll show you the reason why we have two colors is because we're proposing two different pavement sections for the construction in this area. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the red, and that's for all of North Farmcrest, all of South Farmcrest, and for Kincaid just between north and south. So just that little tiny part that kind of finishes your circle. So right now, when you go out there, you basically have 25 feet from back of curb to back of curb. And we're proposing to keep that same width, but we're going to tear it all out and replace it all. So we're going to remove the curb, we're going to remove the pavement, we're actually going to go in there and undercut below the bottom of the existing pavement, somewhere between 8 and 12 inches, depending on how thick that pavement is in areas. And we're going to come back and we're going to basically proof roll that and make sure that you have a solid footing of clay right there. If it's solid, we're going to proof roll it and we're going to move on to the other layers. If it's not solid, we have some details where we can undercut that, try to help bridge some areas. We have some contingency quantities that are accounted for. So, but basically after we proof roll that, we're going to put a geotextile fabric down, and then we're going to put a layer of aggregate. That layer of aggregate has multiple purposes. One, there's your structural purpose. You get some structural strength out of your aggregate. But probably more importantly, in my opinion, is that aggregate has voids in it. Those voids allow water to go through it. We have a subgrade that's going to be sloped. So if you get water in your subgrade, it's going to end up in the aggregate. It's going to drain down to the two sides. And when I get to the curb, there'll be an underdrain system that can collect that and move it into the storm sewer system. So, but above the aggregate, we'll have different layers of asphalt on top of that. So that asphalt section will be 20 foot wide. And then on each side, you'll have a concrete rolled curb and gutter. So each side is 2.5 feet, which then gets us up to our 25 feet. So that vertical clearance for a rolled curb and gutter is about 4 inches. So it's very mountable. It's not a box curb, so it's not straight, it's rolled. And then underneath of that rolled curb and gutter, we have another aggregate trench, and within that aggregate trench, there will be a 6-inch perforated pipe. It's a rigid pipe. It's not like the 6-inch perforated pipe that you find at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's just a better pipe. And so that underdrain, that's what I refer to as the underdrain, the perforated pipe, and that will collect water that collects in the subgrade below the pavement, but it will also collect water that basically comes down your aggregates. So the other purpose of the underdrain is, and I can't remember off the top of my head how many there are, but we will also collect downspouts that go through the existing curb or outlet basically right on the street. So we'll take those underground and we'll get them basically off of the street. Downspouts cause a lot of ice in the wintertime. They cause a lot of water through basically through the other seasons of the year. If I go too fast, I tend to talk fast. I'm sorry, it's just my nature. If I go too fast, please stop me, and I can either repeat something or slow down. So the other typical section is just that other section of Kincaid Road, from South Farmcrest to about 400 feet south of there, which is the low point in the road. There's some catch basins. So the reason why we are touching this street, this section of street, is that we are installing a number of catch basins at the intersection of Kincaid and South Farmcrest. South Farmcrest comes down, Kincaid comes down. There's a lot of water coming down through there, so we're proposing to capture that storm water. We have to take it somewhere. The existing storm sewer system is at the bottom of Kincaid Road, so we're running a storm sewer system down Kincaid. Instead of just cutting a 3-foot wide trench through there and just patching that trench, the village has proposed that we do a mill and overlay. So while we're not reconstructing that section of Kincaid, it will have a fresh asphalt surface on it. So the other geometric modification that we're looking to perform is to install a couple of grass medians within the subdivision. So we are looking at installing these. The first one is east of the intersection of North and South Farmcrest. So the length of, and then the second one, and then I can talk about them together. And then the second one is south of the intersection of North Farmcrest and Kincaid, and north of the intersection of South Farmcrest and Kincaid. So there's a couple of factors that start to drive how large these medians can be. And there's a couple of factors as to why we're proposing the medians. So the length, so we're limited by driveway locations. We don't want to put a median, where it's going to affect somebody's driveway. So we're confined by that length, but additionally, we have to provide tapers because the medians are in the center of the road, and we have to taper the traffic around them. The taper length is defined or is specified by how far you're tapering somebody over and the speed of the road. So we have these limitations in which define the length of these islands. So one of the reasons for the installation of the islands, which, and I'm going to use median and island and traffic and landscape. I may start to use those interchangeably because they are medians. So I apologize for that if I start to kind of use some words interchangeably. But one of the reasons for these is that we're reducing the pavement width. And a reduction of pavement width is associated with a reduction of speed. So I mentioned before in the typical section, you have 20 foot of asphalt and 2.5 feet of curb and gutter on each side. So what we're proposing to do is reduce the width of the asphalt to 16 feet or 8 feet on each side of the median, and then you still have your 2.5 foot road curb and gutter, which technically is not considered part of the roadway. So instead of a 10-foot driving lane, you're reducing it down to an 8-foot driving lane. In FHWA, there's been a lot of research on a lot of different traffic calming devices, and FHWA has found that an average speed decrease for traffic medians or landscape medians is about 4 miles per hour in these sections. The only other item that I'd like to bring up with these, in order to get a 6-foot landscaped island, which it was important aesthetically for the village to do something that had some kind of green on it. And 6 foot is probably really the minimum that we're looking at. We needed to bump the roadway out 1 foot in each direction. So you can see here, so not only are you diverting around this, but you're actually diverting the curb by 1 foot as well. We are still well within the right of way of the village, but you can see that that curb does not go perfectly straight. Wes told me not to touch the screen. So you can see the locations of these. Are those clear to everybody? I have some addresses popped up there as well, which is insane because if you look at the intersection of North Farmcrest and South Farmcrest, the people on both sides of the street have 3109. One is off of South and one is off of North, but it's does anybody live at 3109? North or South? Okay. So here's some examples of some of these. So I personally worked on the two that have the portrait pictures. The one on the left is in the city of Blue Ash. That one was only 4 foot wide. And the reason for that, it is a 25 foot wide street, but the reason for that is their curb was a vertical curb. And so we didn't want to reduce, we only reduced the lane width to 9 foot instead of 8 foot, because you don't have that same little bit of cushion as you do on a rolled curb as you have a vertical curb. Also, that city was looking at putting pavers in. It's on Malsbury Road. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the city of Blue Ash. Malsbury was extended into the Daventry, which is a residential development adjacent to Summit Park. So the old section of Malsbury, which is kind of like this side of the photo, was very industrial. So we wanted to slow traffic down as it entered a residential street. The other one, this is in the city of Fort Thomas. And you can see the city decided to do a concrete instead of grass on that one. That road was already a little thinner. It was about 22 foot wide. And there was no parking on that street, which I know there's parking on your guys' street. But again, it's a residential area. The 85th percentile speed, with anybody who's familiar with 85th percentile speed, it's basically the speed at which 85% of the people drive at or less, was over 30 miles per hour on a 25 mile per hour street. So it was pretty high. And while we haven't done any follow-up speed studies yet, we have heard that it has reduced the speed in that area. This one came from my marketing group. I've been told that it was installed somewhere in Northeast Ohio in our Cleveland area. It is green, which is why I asked that. I was like, I know we've done these, can somebody send me a picture of one? It's poorly maintained, so I apologize for that. But it's something similar as to what we're proposing here in the village. So let's talk about some of the construction. It's going to be long and it's going to be hard. This is the bad news of all of this. We are going to be going down to dirt on your streets. It's going to look way worse before it looks better. The contractors will make mistakes and they will drop something in your yard. They will tear out a piece of your driveway that they weren't supposed to tear out. I mean, there's going to be headaches associated with this. We do lots of street reconstructions, and it never goes perfect, you know. So what I would anticipate to occur, and we can go over in more detail of this in the spring when we have a contractor and we know exactly how they're going to proceed with this. But typically what we have seen on streets that are not dead ends, so basically, you know, anywhere within these streets that are being worked on, you can get around in some way or another. So basically what we have typically seen is that the contractors, we've permitted the contractor to take up to 300 feet of roadway. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna tear that 300 feet of roadway out. While they're at it, you're gonna get a new driveway apron, which is, the length of that will vary because we are doing a reconstruction, so we're doing minor tweaks. But they're gonna take out the whole width of pavement, and unless it's an emergency, you're not gonna have access. Now, there are exceptions to that rule. If you have mobility issues, we can put items in the plans to make sure that you always have access to your driveway. If you are aware of somebody in your neighborhood who has a mobility issue, please let the village know. But basically, they will tear that out. They will put the curb, they want to put the under drain and the curb in. While that curb is curing, they will pour your driveway if you have a concrete driveway, so that once the curb cures, your driveway is also ready. So while the curb and the concrete in your driveway are curing, which curing is just another word that concrete has to set for a period of time before you can drive on it, they will start to install the pavement. So they'll do the proof rolling, they'll do the aggregate base, they'll do the asphalt. So one thing that you will notice, when they do the 300 or so feet in front of your house, the surface course will not be on there. So it's not a finished product. They won't put the surface course on until everything is done. But this is what it's gonna look like in front of your house. I mean, there will be equipment of this size, excuse me, and there will be contractors, there will be pipe in your yard. I worked with a lot of great contractors. I've seen contractors carrying groceries for residents. I've seen contractors carrying pumpkin seeds for residents. I've seen contractors do all kinds of things to help out the residents in which they are directly affected. So here's what we anticipate the project schedule is. We're going to put this thing out to bid in either late January or early February. We hope construction is going to start in March. We have coordinated with the utilities. You're actually going to get a new water main as part of this project as well, which is great. I don't know if you guys have, I'm sure you don't have dirty water, but it's old enough that they feel like they're going to come in and replace it, particularly because we're going to reconstruct. I don't know if you guys follow the construction industry, and there are material delays. There are labor issues associated with construction. This is what we anticipate for construction. I would not be surprised if this goes, over into red, and you'll get some red into 23. Just want to be upfront. So, but that leads to good news, because at the end of the day, this is what your street's going to look like. New curb and gutter, new asphalt. You're going to have green grass again one day, I promise. So with that, we're looking for information from you guys. Scott kind of started to bring that up. If you're aware of any utility issues, any ponding issues, any of your neighbors with mobility issues, any other issues within the right-of-way, we get a lot of information from meetings like this that we don't necessarily know about. With that, is there any